Hi, guys. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about breakups. I hope you enjoy.
Story time. My boyfriend broke up with me because I like the dildo more than him.
I don't know how that got in there. Forgive me.
If you're struggling with your relationships, here's my story time on how a Japanese boyfriend broke up with me over text and then how I found my husband. In the previous story time, the first part of this video, I did talk about the fact that I lived in Japan. That's when I had my first boyfriend who ended up being Japanese, and he was, I believe, the same age as me or maybe a little bit younger actually. I thought that we were doing really well together, but the cultural difference was just unacceptable because the way of having relationships and the way that people think about relationships in Japan and in other countries, in Russia specifically for me, was completely different. Dating a Japanese person is not the easiest task. After dating that guy for several months, he did break up with me over text messages right after New Year's holiday. So on the 1st of January, we had a date. And then on the 2nd of January, I got a text message saying that, you know what, this is not going to work out. Let's just be friends. And
That's happened even when I was younger in junior high and high school and college. You would hear these stories of people basically breaking up with one another over the phone. That seems like something that should happen in person, at least as an adult, but we'll give her a pass because she definitely seems very young.
I sent him a very long message saying how much he sucked and how it's not okay to break up with anyone over text messages. Please don't ever do that. That is a very childish thing to do. And at the time, I was working at an English language school in Tokyo. So one of my coworkers was this American guy who is not my husband. And then we started to hang out a lot. We started to go on little dates. And then we ended up getting married and moving to America. It's been 4 years that we've been together and like the third year of us being married. The only proper partner that I've been with is my husband, which some of you may find crazy because how can you only be with one guy? Like, how is that possible? But I think that once you find somebody that clicks with you, somebody that you find that works for you as a person you want to spend the rest of your life with, it really doesn't matter if you had 2 boyfriends, 0 boyfriends, or 79 boyfriends.
Bravo. That really feels good to hear that, right? That gives a lot of people a lot of hope because the reality is not every girl and every guy are sleeping with a million people. There's a lot of people that are really trying to stay loyal to their boyfriends and not have a high body count. Bravo. Good job.
Really doesn't matter, and I really hope that we get away from this old outdated point of view that you have to date a certain amount of people or that you have to try all the different boyfriends and see which ones you like the best. If it feels right for you, then go for it. So that is something that I definitely learned now that I'm 26 and I've been married for several years. If you're like me and if you struggle with relationships, please don't think that there's something wrong with you because my first boyfriend, that Japanese guy, I had when I was like 20, and it's really not that big of a deal. I was always pressured to think that you have to have all of these boyfriends, that you always have to have, like, you have to start dating people when you are like 15, and then if you're not dating anyone, then there's something wrong with you. That is not the case. Sometimes
Hey, that was a great way to start. All right, let's keep this going. I like this one.
So back in college, I dated this guy. Let's say his name is Kenny. Now, Kenny was a really sweet guy. He was older than me. At the time, I was like 16. He was in college. And I know the age difference was not the best, but let's be real. A lot of girls at that age group do date older guys, regardless of what the laws say. Now, at the time, I was still a virgin, and he actually did not pressure me for sex, which was fantastic. He went to my basketball games. He would pick me up after school in his Benz. I think it was like his dad's Benz or whatever, but the bass was bumping. He was really supportive of my basketball. He was really sweet. Now that same year, there was a girl that came into high school. Let's call her Michelle. And Michelle was from Jamaica, like straight from Jamaica. Now my family is from Jamaica, but I was born and raised in the US. So I've always had a strong affinity for Jamaica and Jamaican culture. but Michelle Lee was like 100% through and through Jamaican. And she didn't have any other friends besides me. And I kind of like took her under my wing and was like, oh my gosh, let's be friends. Kenny was from some other island, but he was really like obsessed with Jamaican culture. He actually really put me on to a lot of Vibes Cartel at the time. The three of us would hang out all the time. Let's just say that. I've never been the type of girl who is like, oh, I keep my man over here and my friends over here. If the energy is natural and everybody is cool, I like for my man and my friends to get along because I'm like, okay, cool. Like everybody knows each other.
I think her friend's going to get a little too close to her boyfriend, but it sounds like her boyfriend's not really much of a boyfriend.
I believe Kenny and I dated for about a year, and the relationship was going well until one day he was like, we need to talk. We went to my place and he pulled out this song. And if you're Jamaican, you know this song. If you're not, it says, "It's not that I don't love you. You know how much I do. But it's just the feeling you give me when you stroke my hand. Da 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 da. So I'm leaving." Anyway, I was distraught. I was hurt. I did not see this coming. I was like, how could this be? We always had such a great relationship. Whatever. So time passes and
Wait a minute, did I miss something, guys? Tell me if I missed something. Weren't they not having sex? If you're not having sex because you're underage, which is obviously the reason he was a gentleman, it sounds like, but he's got a chance to move on with, adults. I think he made the right move, but I think she might have saw it for a little bit more than it was. But whatever he was doing at first is weird, isn't it? If she's 16 and he's basically paying her way around town, that's odd. I wonder what the deal is with that.
Michelle and Kenny are dating. I'm hurt. I'm distraught. My teenage self is like, how the fuck could this have happened?
It's a little hard to forgive those ones, but at the same time, you could see that one coming. Next!
Story time. So I just got out of a 4-year relationship that recently, just now, because my partner believed that his privacy is his privacy and my privacy is his privacy. Like needs to know where I'm at, what I do at all times, but whenever I ask him, it's a problem. So he is a USPS employee, sorry. And he delivers mail, but he also delivers his package. So whenever I'm close to catching the motherfucker, he has my phone hacked somehow. He sees my location. At this point, I don't care.
I was thinking right when he said his boyfriend worked for the mail service that he could easily, stalk him and see what's going on. Not that that's anything you should do, because of course you shouldn't, but you know what I mean. That's where I thought this was going. But now he's saying that when he's on his route, he is delivering his package to somebody as well, or maybe people, multiple. Let's see.
What fucks me up is, so you need to know everything about me, but I can't know anything about you. And then you go do your, charades, go fuck with those nasty ass yucks and act like nothing's going on. I really don't understand or comprehend that, by the fact that I believe that when you're in a relationship, committed relationship, and living together, which we not living together anymore, before we actually, he decided to break up with me.
Sounds to me like he's hurt, and it sounds to me like he's a little bit obsessed with his ex-boyfriend, because apparently the boyfriend did end up breaking up with him. but you can see the pain in his eyes, even though he has shades on. Yes, I know he has shades on.
Let's get Starbucks and talk about why I broke up with my boyfriend of 5 years. Yeah. It's been 8 months and I want to give you some real tea. I wasn't going to make this, but my friend told me I should. She told me this a while back. Just because it might help others. And now that it's far enough away from the situation, I feel like I can talk about it. Long story short, I really just stayed for potential. And I said from the beginning, I love you unconditionally. Which unconditional love isn't bad, but the way I thought of it was not right. I was giving unconditional love to someone that just truly did not deserve it. I was just kind of waiting for them to grow up and just be who I wanted them to be. So in a way, I was always comparing them to the version I thought of who they could be, which was a person they talked about becoming. Things just changed. And I was like, well, I love you unconditionally, so I have to stay till you become this person. And they just weren't. And I just didn't want to be a failure in unconditional love. So that's why I stayed.
You know, they say that a lot of times with women, they try to change the man, right? You got to really get used to who they are, take some time, and then hopefully you'll marry them when they become that person on their own.
And I really thought they were going to reach this potential eventually. And maybe they will, just not with me. But that's really what everything boils down to. Like, yeah, there's a lot of wrong things done to me, but those are the reasons why I allowed them to be done, and the reasons why I chose to stay. I saw this quote on Instagram. There is the account. There you go. Giving up on someone who isn't actually making an effort isn't actually giving up on anything. I feel like that is so important for people to hear, especially people that were in relationships for a very long time with someone they met very young. It feels like you're losing something, but you're really not. I can't say you won't be heartbroken when you leave it, but for me personally, I wasn't. Maybe that's because I stayed longer than I should have. I kind of got over it in the relationship. One piece of advice I'll give, and take it with a grain of salt. I don't like giving advice like unsolicited. I don't know your situation. If you're feeling this way, one thing that helped me was giving myself a deadline. Like, I'm going to allow myself to think about it for this long, and if I still feel this way, it's a sign to end things.
I wonder if she talks to her boyfriends like this. I'm going to give you a deadline. You're going to think about things. When we get back, you're going to tell me what you think and if you want to stay together. Deal?
The story time of how I broke up with my ex, part 3. So like I said, he had immediately started packing a bag to leave, but then he came downstairs and grabbed Levi's food out of the closet and then started gathering up all of Levi's stuff, like his toys and his leash. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're not taking Levi with you. And he goes, oh yes I am. This is my fucking dog. Adopting Levi in the first place is honestly like the biggest regret I have for my relationship with my ex, because Levi just didn't deserve to be stuck in that situation with us. Granted, he was only there for 2 months, but still, he didn't deserve to go through it at all. I'm not even particularly a dog person, I'm more of a cat person, and we already had 2 cats, and it was my ex's idea to get a dog in the first place, and it took months and months of my ex telling me that he was going to be the one to train the dog and make sure that the dog got all of its exercise, and that he was going to pay for things like food and the vet bills to convince me that we could get this dog, because he said that this dog was going to be like his dog. This dog was going to be his responsibility, right? And can we guess what happened? Not only did I pay $2,000 for Levi because he was a purebred charcoal lab, but I bought his crate.
Did she just say $2,000 for a dog? Oh my God. I went into the mall the other day. Dogs are like 4 grand now at the mall. I think they did away with that years ago, but these dogs are being sold for crazy amounts. Whenever people spend that much money, it reminds me of how I used to get a dog by looking it up in the newspaper, and you could get a purebred dog for like 300 or 400 bucks in the paper. Oh yeah, I forgot. You guys don't know what a paper is. Forgive me.
Toys, his leash, his food, I paid for his vet bills. It all fell onto me. And I absolutely fell in love with Levi. Like I said, wasn't really a dog person. Levi changed me, okay? Throughout that month where we had him, he was like my best buddy, okay? I was in love with this dog. And for all intents and purposes, Levi was my dog, okay? And my ex is standing there in front of me, holding this tiny, helpless puppy, saying that he is going to take Levi with him, even though he has no car, no place to stay, and a shitty job. So I'm frantically following my ex around the downstairs of the condo, trying to get him to put Levi down, because this man is bigger than me, he's stronger than me. If he really wanted to take Levi with him, he was going to take Levi with him, and there was going to be nothing that I could do about it.
It's probably good that these guys broke up. They're both a little crazy, if you ask me. He doesn't have a place to stay. He wants the dog. Apparently, he's going to be homeless, but at least he'll have a puppy. She wants to keep the puppy, even though she's a cat lady. She's willing to pay a lot of money for this dog. Let her have it. That's my judgment. Bum, bum, bum.
So, my long distance best friend and I don't want a friendship with her anymore after 15 years. We're both 30 now, and we've been through a lot of phases together since we were 15, which is very normal for a very long friendship. We've had a lot of phases where we've spoken very often, phases where we haven't. I'm definitely the type of friend that it doesn't take much. I'm pretty low maintenance. Now, normally what we would do is we would send each other, since we're long distance and we're both like on opposite schedules, because I was on night shift, on third shift for a long time. So we didn't really, I was like, how are we going to talk? So what we would do is we would send each other videos on Snapchat, and I honestly loved it. She started going through some more like mental health things, which I get it. And she was going through a lot of loss. So she wasn't snapping me as much, and it started dying out to the point where like I would send videos and it would be a week, 2 weeks, a month, a couple months, and then just never opening my messages. So then I, started being like, okay, like she needs some distance right now, like that's okay. And I was just like, hey, like I'm here for you. I love you. Just when you need me, I'm here. It started getting to a point where I was feeling like, I feel like you're my friend and I'm not your friend. The type to post on social media, so you never know like what she's actually doing. She's very private, which is totally fine. But I would notice, I'd look on like, be scrolling through Snapchat, and I'm like, I texted you like yesterday. Or I texted you a week ago, but you can hang out with your friends. Even just like reacting to it, like giving like a heart or something. Just letting her know, like I love you, like I'm here for you. And it started really turning into her never, ever replying.
So they were friends together for 15 years. But I've had these same situations where you work with somebody and you're a legit friend with them for many, many years. And then all of a sudden something happens where you move or you start another job. And all of a sudden it's like they just don't want to talk to you anymore. It's the weirdest thing. You should be walking with us every day. I have another fun breakup story for our walk. So go get your shoes. Let's go for a walk. Get your Monday started off with a nice walk. It helps you kind of relax and get ready for the start of your week. And it helps you wake up so that when you arrive to work on Monday, you're ready to go. So let's start looking at Monday as a positive thing. Guys, I heard a story that kind of made me chuckle. It's kind of sad, but there's no death involved. There's a fake death involved, though. So before we go into it, imagine a scenario where a guy fakes his death, takes out a life insurance policy, which I assume is for his family, right? And then he ends up going off to Europe with some girl of his dreams. That is the story of Ryan Borgard, a 45-year-old who lives in Wisconsin. He ran off to Europe with a woman that he met online from Uzbekistan. I don't even know what Uzbekistan people look like. I think I'm going to look that up later on. But it doesn't sound to me like one of those countries that is synonymous with, women that are free going. Doesn't it kind of sound like a place where there would be really harsh religious thoughts on what's okay and what's not okay with women? Anyway, 45-year-old Ryan Bogard ran off to Europe. It was found out that he purchased tickets online. Now, the reason I'm saying it like this is he was actually reported missing in a nearby lake near his home where he lives in Wisconsin. People found his vehicle there, his car keys, his kayak was topped over, almost like somebody was in it, which would be him in this case. and it was kind of flopped over on its front side in the water, and then his vehicle was there. The classic look of somebody that went to enjoy a day kayaking on the lake, and all of a sudden he's missing and presumed dead. They interviewed this guy named Keith Cormacken, and he belongs to a agency or organization called Bruce's Legacy. And it was funny because he took his boats and his people out there to that lake, and they scoured the lake inside and out and all around for a whole month. And when they asked him what he thought about this idea that maybe the guy never died, but he faked his death to go to Europe with a Uzbekistan woman outside of his marriage, the guy replied, "Such a waste of time." You know, it's funny because if you think about it, you're really hoping to find out that the guy is alive and well somewhere. But when you waste a whole month and a whole bunch of resources and time and energy looking for this guy in a lake, hoping to find his body so that his family can, have some closure, and all of a sudden you find out that it was just a big scam, it sounds kind of funny. Sounds kind of shitty, actually, to be honest with you. What do you guys think of this? Isn't that crazy? So let me tell you about a couple red flags that kind of tipped authorities off that maybe this guy wasn't dead at all. Apparently, when they checked for his online activities, apparently he had purchased some discount travel tickets to Europe. Apparently, he had also taken out a $375,000 life insurance policy, which is always suspect, right? And, supposedly after he was officially declared dead, apparently Canadian authorities ran a check on his ID up in Canada. And that happened after he died, and the only way that could happen is if he was alive and well. So that's the basic premise of the story. This guy had a wife and I believe 2 or 3 kids. There's a picture of them, so I'll share it up here. But he basically had a family, had the typical American dream life. But then that leads me to my first point. A lot of times we think that married people have it great, right? The grass always looks greener. When you're single, maybe you're lonely, maybe you've got money but nobody to share it with, right? Maybe you're broke but no one to have a teammate with in life. And so we look at people that are married and we get jealous of them. Well, those people that we get jealous of because we think their life is perfect, a lot of times they're jealous of us. They want to be the single person that can go on dates with mystery women from Uzbekistan. They want to have their freedom again. They want to have the ability to say, I don't have any kids. And I don't think it's because he doesn't love his children. I'm sure he did. But it's just the human mind is really, really weird. And when we get a hold of somebody in our mind that we think likes us and we like them, because let's be honest, more than likely, he probably got pictures of this Uzbekistani woman sent to him. And for all we know, it could be a catfishing situation, right? But when all of a sudden we think, wow, this pretty gorgeous woman likes me, a lot of times in our head we have this weird situation where all of a sudden we're thinking like a crazy person. Now, I'm not saying that's me or that's the average guy, but sometimes that does happen to people, and it happens to women as well. So let's real quick read a couple of these comments because I thought they were pretty interesting. By the way, the police captain was making a plea to him, please come back, your family deserves you and they want to see you and they miss you. And in reality, that sheriff just wanted to arrest him. You and I both know that, you know? At JG 3848 says, having your kids go through the horrific trauma of their father dying is better than filing for divorce? What a selfish POS. I believe POS is piece of shit, right? What else could we put in there? Player overseas? What a selfish player overseas. What else could we make it out of it? If you guys have a fun one, let me know down below. But ultimately, I agree with you. You know, there's something really sad. My grandmother, God rest her soul, 98 and a half years old, when she perished, and it still hurt me, but I tried to look at it from a point of view that so many people lose their grandma and their grandpa when they're exceedingly young. And I got to have literally a lifetime with my grandma, and I felt so lucky. But that sadness, could you imagine if that was one of your direct parents? I found out at the beginning of this year that my father had passed away 5 years ago. The reason I found that out is because I tried reaching out to my dad because I wanted a relationship now, only to find out that he had left this earth 5 years ago, right? That he had died. And even that made me exceedingly sad, if not forever, for at least a couple days, right? I mean, it's really hard to be sad because I didn't really have a long time relationship with my father. I only saw him once or twice during my whole life. But anyway, in this case, he had a family that obviously he had been in their life permanently all the time, you know? And for him to just leave and abandon them in that way is very, very sad. At the same time, maybe his kids know something that we don't. His kids look like teenagers. They might very well have thought that their parents were arguing all the time, and they might have been okay with their dad getting a divorce. And as shitty as this sounds, guys, I don't know where that $375,000 life insurance policy went. What if he left that to his wife and kids? That's not as good as having you around as their father, but that's not chump change. $375K is a lot of money. I think when we hear this story, we naturally assume that he was hoping to spend that money himself, but think about it. That's not how life insurance works. You leave it to your beneficiaries, which in most people's cases is their wife and kids. So again, I don't know if this is necessarily his way of ditching out on the family in a normal sense of ditching out of the family. It sounds to me like he had a plan to just be single again, but to still very much take care of his family through insurance, which is kind of lame, let's be honest. There's no good way to put it. Sometimes I'll be making a point or coming up with an idea, and then I can kind of picture myself thinking, God, I bet I'll have to erase that tonight when I edit. That sounds like a butthole's rebuttal, right? Sometimes you give a rebuttal that just comes across like, God, only an asshole would say that. But hopefully you guys know what I mean. If you're giving somebody $375K, at least you're not leaving them totally empty-handed, and more than likely he and his wife probably had some money in the bank already. Sharon MXG says, if I were his kid, I would want him locked up. How cruel. To make your own children believe you're dead so you can run off and have a new life. Sick. You know, it's funny, because if he would have gotten a divorce from his wife, even if that would have ruined his children's lives, right? We would still respect that. We would say, hey, it's your right as a citizen and as a person in the world to divorce your spouse. But it wouldn't have made it any better. It would have still made him that jerk that ran off to Europe with the Uzbekistan lady that he met online. What a shitty guy, no matter how you slice or dice it, right? But at the same time, I can't help but agree with you. When you're trying to fake your death, you know as well as I do, some people don't handle loss very well. Wouldn't it make you feel bad if you were spying on your kids because once again they think you're dead? And wouldn't it be real bad if you found out that your kids ended up having real bad mental trauma from this? And then imagine you're one of his kids, and imagine 4 or 5 years down the line you're still really sad, and then all of a sudden you start getting birthday cards and Christmas cards from this person. I know this sounds crazy, but we've all grown up watching Dateline and 2020 and all these different shows, right? What if this guy had one of those grandiose ideas that, hey, one day I'll let my kids know that I'm still alive, so it won't be that big of a deal? And what if the whole family had an infatuation with these shows? And who knows, I could see him even having a fun conversation with his kids while they're driving to school one day. And he'd be like, what would you do if Dad ever did that? What do you mean, Dad? Are you going to ditch Mom? No, I would never do that. But what would you do if I did? And don't be dumb. I know you guys have all had those conversations with your husbands or your wives. Hey, what would you do if I killed you and took all the insurance money? At Risu Always Official. That might be Rescue Always Official, and I just forgot the C in there. This is a blessing in disguise for his wife. He's not even man enough to get a divorce and take responsibility for his children. Again, you're right, but at the same time, in his warped mind, he might be thinking, hey, I'm leaving my family all the money and all the property that I have, because even that vehicle with the keys was probably going to go to his kids, right? Maybe they needed a car, for when they go off to college, and Dad wanted to be there for them. And he figured in his warped mind, this way I can give Johnny the car, I can give Leslie the money, and I can be out the door on my own. By the way, I made up those names. I don't know the name of his family. You want to know something? In this world where nobody cares for anybody anymore, maybe there's a little bit of different people out there, specifically men. Maybe they're trying to shy away from words like responsibility. Right now I'm 48 years old. I don't have the responsibility of kids anymore because my kids are adults, right? And I don't have the responsibility of going to the weekly soccer or football game or dance recital, right? And you get to the point where that's a real comfortable part of your life. But people that have multiple children and multiple responsibilities, sometimes they just snap. Sometimes they felt like they never had a choice in the matter, like life just kind of happened and they never got to sow those wild oats, a typical midlife crisis. Now, in the past, when we would hear about the midlife crisis, a guy would spend all his money buying a Ferrari or some kind of goofy thing, right? Maybe start going on lavish trips out of town and spending a lot of money. Some people's midlife crisis is something they can get over relatively quickly. For other people, it's a life-changing event. But it definitely happens. But that's no different than the 7-year itch. Men and women, when they're together for X amount of years, they start to almost fantasize about what life would be like without their spouse. Is it right? No. But I think it's just a common part of life. So if you're one of these guys out there or women out there that are thinking about doing something goofy, like faking your death and stuff, you might want to just go about it the normal way. Just get a divorce or a separation, or if you really want to be dastardly, just separate without getting a divorce. Then you can probably stay away from alimony that way if you just stayed married. And no, that's not what I did, so don't think that I did that. Honey Sparkles 2 says, when a man doesn't understand it's a blessing to have a loving family. Honey Sparkles, that's the ultimate punishment. Sometimes it sucks. We like to think that karma is something that's going to save us and take care of our enemies, right? We like to think that when people do us wrong, that it's going to come back on them and somebody's going to do them wrong. But it doesn't always work that way. But it does work that way from the standpoint of someone somewhere down the line is going to let this guy down. He's going to realize one day that that person in Uzbekistan, whether she is real or not, she probably wasn't worth the relationship that he is giving up with his wife and his family members, with his kids. And keep in mind, when you fake your death, you're not only getting rid of your immediate family, but all of your friends and your extended family as well. So maybe this guy felt in his life like his kids didn't care for him, his wife didn't really love him. It might have been one of these sexless marriages. He might have had in-laws that he absolutely dreaded, and he might have been ostracized or estranged from his own family. So we don't really know the whole story, but we do know that usually when people make rash choices or rash decisions, usually it's because they feel like their back is against the wall and they're in a corner and they have nothing else that makes sense to them. So we pray for those individuals and we walk, because sometimes we might be dealing with people like this guy. We've all been ditched before in relationships, right? Sometimes it comes out of the blue. This one's a little over the top, of course. All right, here's the best comment, because it's the one that we kind of all hope is true. Texas T 5686 says, I bet the quote-unquote woman he met online is a Nigerian dude. Texas T, let's be honest. That would be the most fun, wouldn't it? Imagine you go out of country and you find out that the whole world knows that it's a big fake, that you're a big fraud, right? So now you have to lay low. You reach out to your Uzbekistani girlfriend only to realize it's some guy named John from Nigeria. Wouldn't that be a nightmare? Now the friendly sheriff from his Wisconsin town is going on national news saying, hey, come back, your family loves you, they just want to know you're alive and well, and we want you back. And what that sheriff is really saying is, come back, we've got a jail cell ready for you, you're going to be here for 5 to 10, you know? So either way, this guy is kind of screwed. And when they do figure out where he is ultimately and catch him, if they haven't already, because this story was like a week old, he's going to be the laughingstock of the newspaper or the news wherever he does live. Guys, this next story, kind of sad, but again, it might not be bad at all. This could be horseplay. You're thinking, what the heck is he talking about? Guys, in the state of Maryland, a second grader was hung by a fourth grader in the boys' bathroom of C. Paul Barnhart's elementary school. This is a part of the Charles County School District out there in Maryland. This little boy survived, and he has a neck contusion. And they make it sound like, oh my God, it's a neck contusion, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think a neck contusion simply just means he's got bruising around his neck because they tried hanging him. The story the school gives is that, yes, there was a fourth grader that was playing with the second grader, and he did hang him, but he was trying to hang him up by his backpack, and apparently it got stuck in a certain way where it ended up kind of choking the second grader. So this leads us to a lot of questions. Number one, the parents of the second grader were very much concerned, and they didn't want to share their identity. So the video that I was watching kind of showed them in the background, you know, with very poor lighting. So you couldn't quite make out what they looked like, but they were basically saying, hey, we want policy change. We think that there should be a hall monitor in all the hallways of the school, just in case these little bullying issues come up, because they believe their second grader was bullied because, number one, it happened in a boys' bathroom. And if you guys remember back to your school days, the bathroom is where a lot of bullying can happen because it's literally a private little confined space away from ears and eyes of teachers and principals and staff members, right? So these things do happen. But here's the tough thing for me. She also wants a split where the kids that are K through third grade would be in different hallways at different times than, let's say, kids from fourth through sixth grade. And I applaud her for that idea because all the grade schools I ever went to were split up that way. So you wouldn't be in a bathroom with a sixth grader, and if you were, it would have been like, you know, a unique situation. Normally, when you go to the bathroom, it's going to be fellow K through third graders. But this wasn't a kindergartner, this was a second grader, and this wasn't a sixth grader, this was a fourth grader that supposedly did this. Now, that doesn't necessarily make it right, because I think we've all been in first, second, and third grade, and even if a kid is only 1 or 2 grades ahead of you, they're usually much bigger, much smarter, and much stronger, so they very much could bully you, even if you were the same size. I think we can all agree on that, right? So anyway, she believes that the kids should be separated, which I agree, and that there should be a hall monitor, which again, I don't think that's too much to ask for. I think what she should also ask for, though, is probably about $500,000 to $1 million. What do you guys think? I would have sued the pants off this school, especially when you consider that that kid was probably very lucky that he only got a neck contusion and not, you know, not death from this situation. And I'm kind of torn on this because, yes, I believe that as adults, many of us have a little seed of evil that can lead to peril for somebody, right? Or that can lead to violence or danger. I don't know if fourth graders have it just yet. Yes, when you're 5th, 6th, 7th graders, you should kind of know right from wrong. But again, I could see a little 4th grader trying to lift up a 2nd grader onto a hook. I remember when I was little, people would lift kids into garbage cans kind of to bully them, but it was more for laughs than, to threaten them. But at the same time, I know certain kids probably were threatened. Anyway, Mac Bass 2011 says, so a kid hangs another, the school principal protects him, then he gets to stay in school scot-free. That's insane. Mac Bass, I agree with you. I don't know what schools are doing nowadays. I think the schools are in a bad spot. The main reason they're in a bad spot is because when you try to make everybody happy, you end up making no one happy. The school needs to take back control of what happens in their walls. They need to start being behind the teacher. They need to make sure that when students start to get out of line, that they nip that in the bud. For example, with this 4th grader, maybe I'm wrong and maybe he's completely innocent and maybe he's a completely good boy, and I'm sure his parents would argue that. But the reality is, this is a really big red flag. Is the school going to do the right thing and make sure this never happens and keep an eye on this young boy? Or are they just going to ignore him and let him kind of run free in the system until he does something even worse? Because if you don't discipline this kid or let him know in a stern way that what he did was incredibly wrong, he's probably going to get worse. At Pat McBride 9853 says, they don't want to be identified, they being the parents of the 2nd grader that got hung, but every kid in that school knows his name. It's one thing for the kids in the school to know your name. It's another thing for the parents to have access to you. So if they, for the safety of themselves and their family, want to be kept, unidentified, I'm going to respect that, because you got to remember, they know more about this community they live in than we do. And some of these people in the community, when it comes to their own kids, can be rather gangsta, if you know what I mean. And the last thing you want is for somebody to come after you and start threatening your life. What they ought to do is get a lawyer and do it the right way, and they ought to get a lawsuit out of this, like for millions of bucks. Anyway, in closing, have a beautiful day. We'll see you tomorrow.